actually go to LinkedIn? Keep your hand up put your hand up at how many, you go to LinkedIn once a month? Once a month, at least once a month. Hands high real quick, hold the hands up. How about when you go once every 2 weeks? Once a week? Once a day?
That's not bad.
That's not bad.
The app, man, if you don't have the app, the app's awesome.
I just asked that because LinkedIn's been around for an awful long time, and whenever we would go speak and all that sort of thing, you'd find people being just like, well, what's LinkedIn? It's a place where I got my resume, and we sort of joke around like that infomercial where the guy puts the chicken in and everybody yells, set it and forget it. Like you just stick it in and you hit the button and you walk away. It's you go in, you put your job information, you never come back until you realize that suddenly you need another job. And the interesting thing is that over the last probably a year and a half to 2 years, LinkedIn has completely, changed that, and so it's definitely a place you should go daily, I think.
Mine is actually a double barrel question here. How do you identify influencers and advocates to amplify your social media marketing efforts? If you have any suggestions for this and that. Number two, there is what are your thoughts about leveraging your own employees as influencers?
I can take the first cut of this. So,
can you repeat that question?
So how do you identify influencers and advocates for your brand on social media channels? That was the first part of the double-barrel question.
Well, if you have some questions, I can get one of them. I thought you probably
And the second part of the question was, how do you essentially use your own employee force to become advocates and influencers on channels? So I think the first one is definitely use technology. There are a variety of tools which can meet different price points and requirements across the spectrum. But you have to use technology to be able to understand who the influencers are, because the whole concept of who an influencer is changes from channel to channel. The one thing I can tell you is, and this is a personal comment, it's nothing to do with the cloud score, right?
Yeah.
So don't worry about that.
Absolutely
Oh,
nothing.
come on.
So, I knew I was going to break a few hearts out there.
It could have gone either way. Either would you have advocated for cloud or one that went the other way.
So, but fundamentally, I think the key thing is you have to use some sort of technology in order to identify, because you can do these, like with a lot of things, like with marketing automation, same concept. You can do some of these things manually, but you can't scale. And if you're trying to sort of use precious time, it's better there are, tools that are very cheap, and you can use them to at least start getting an initial feel of who the influencers are. But I think more important, before you start using tools, you again need to decide who in your mind for your business is an influencer. Right? It's not necessarily the person with the largest number of followers, right? It doesn't work that way. The second part of your question is very interesting, because that's sort of the next new fad that we are seeing emerging in social, which is this whole thing of how do you use your own employees? How do you empower your employees to become advocates and so on and so forth? Now again, there's a bunch of different things you can do, but I think it's definitely not about creating social media policies and then sort of taking a stick and running after every employee. It's the other way around. So you've got to essentially have a bit of a carrot and stick policy in place in order to encourage them to sort of be free and open enough to go out there and share. Because trust me, one thing is people can smell BS from a mile away, right? And especially on social, if you're not true to yourself, not just as a brand, but as an individual, people get it, right? So the last thing you want to do is to force all of your employees to go out there and march to the party line, because that will come across as a very stilted form of conversation. At the same time, having said that, you have to be a little bit careful that people just don't go off the deep end and start posting content and stuff that can hurt your brand. Right? So that's that. Especially the larger the company is and the more visible and public it is, the more dangerous it becomes. So that's where some of these constraints come.
What wouldn't you say? I mean, you were initially saying that you didn't think that there should be social media policy in place and going after folks, and so I would
All
like
I'm
to
saying is
clarify
that it should not be just about social media policies, because putting some 10 bullet points on a piece of paper and posting it on your website doesn't suddenly create an empowered employee force to go out there and start engaging and responding and so on, right? So this is more of again, I'm putting on my boring enterprise software hat. This is much more to do with, so this is much more to do with managing change, right? It's not again about tools. This is much more with managing change. How do you go about showing them what the benefits are and why it helps them and the company? It cannot be just about the company, otherwise they'll say, why should we do it, right? So it's got to be about what the individual benefits are, their ability to grow their own brands, because personal branding is becoming a big thing now, right? So how can they grow their own brand and at the same time benefit the organization? So that's, to to me, so as far as the first part of the question was much more technology related, tools can help you solve that problem after you sort of define what influence means to you. The second part is much more around managing change than what tools.
I was going to say, I mean, very quick and simple. I've set this up like numerous times, right? There's a tool called Gagline. Have you ever used Gagline?
Yeah, it was a little bit.
I've implemented this twice, and it is the most spectacular thing ever. What it does, in a nutshell, it's called Gaggle Amp. It's
A
terrible.
really weird name, terrible name.
But what a gaggle is it solves a lot of problems for the folks who are like, oh, I don't know what to tweet about, or I don't know what to post about on my LinkedIn profile, I don't know what to share, I'm afraid to share. What this does is it pulls all your most important messages into a gaggle. So you log in as the manager, and you create this gaggle, and basically load up your messages. And you write the message and you put it in this thing. We do like 3 messages a week. Then your members, your employees sign up, and they sign on with Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever, and they choose the messages they want to share, and they can tweet them out that way. So your messages, and it's trackable, there's a leaderboard, and you gamify it, but the idea is to control the messaging and suggest posts for your employees, right? And it works incredibly well. I've set this up twice. We had 110 people on this in Marquette. We're just starting to move.
You guys are
We're starting
actually
to use
using it over there, huh?
Yeah, Andrew spoke, man, turned me on to it. He's got the whole damn CA Technologies team of this thing. But imagine 110 employees updating and sharing only 3 messages a week, right? So you're not overwhelming, and it's not, they can choose not to share something. And it's trackable, and they give you a cost comparison so you can see like what this would have cost, what this reach and the impressions would have cost in PPC, and they give you the savings, right? And on top of that, just getting those social signals out there. I know it's not an SEO thing anymore, but there is a slight boost in SEO if you have your sales development reps or your account reps or anybody updating the LinkedIn profile at least once a day. There's a tiny little boost, right? And so, but again, it's visibility. It's easy to do. It's low-hanging fruit. And for influencers, if you have the money, there's a platform called Tracker, which is incredible. They're in San Francisco. And then the next one down from that is called Get Little Bird. They do killer stuff too. It's a little pricey, and then if you want to know who the most influential person is outside cloud, just do a Twitter search on a keyword, and it usually pops it right up. You can usually do
Yeah,
that.
say the top, right?
Yeah,
It's for top or all. They've said a lot of great stuff for the influencer stuff. I would say with the, you said how do you get employees involved. So I spoke at Dell at the later end of last year, and the interesting thing was it was a social media conference that they were having only for employees. And it actually was not every employee in the entire organization. It was hundreds and hundreds of employees that had gone through what they call SMAC, social media action something. It's basically their training that they have for employees to learn how to use social media. And we sat down with the folks, the CMO of the company, and the folks that were sort of running the activity, the program. And I said, well, what's the end game here? Like, what are you guys doing this for? And they said, well, we hope it'll have some effect on sort of everybody participating in the conversation and being sort of, taking the pride that they have for the organization they work with and potentially sharing it, even if just a little bit, just a tiny bit. I mean, if you imagine, I don't know how many thousands of people work for Dell, but if a few folks were to spend some time and reshare that content, but what they did is they had people go through a certification plan. Now, your company doesn't have to do something like that per se, but to sort of do some small thing where you let them know where they shouldn't cross the line, but most of the time, 90% of what they're allowed to do is going to be perfectly fine. It's only this sort of 10% that you're not allowing them to do, and then sort of give them a couple examples of, this is social media for yourself personally, socially, but this is sort of what we're trying to achieve, professionally, and make it simple, right? Simplicity is just saying, if you're on Twitter, sign up for this and just reshare this content. If you're on LinkedIn,
Don't give them something else to do.
yeah, and so there's Gaggle Amp. There's essentially 2 tools. I know Gaggle Amp is one of them, and then Advocate.
Marcus Nelson, yeah.
Marcus Nelson. So Advocate is new, is a fairly new. It's been around for about a year, and it does something very similar. All it is again, it's a queue that you as the administrator get to say, I'm going to put content in here. I'm going to put links. I'm going to put whatever it is that I want to put in here. I'm going to put my message. And anybody who signs up for my organization just gets a queue of this content, and they can, with a couple clicks, reshare it to their networks. They might be able to change it a little bit, whatever that is, and then you can actually, measure it. So by actually creating the content for them, it doesn't put all this effort and weight on top of them to do things beyond what they're already doing at your business and so on. But the other quick thing, sorry, I want to add to that is getting them involved, because almost every single employee at your company, no matter who you know, what level they are working, almost always has really incredible stuff to contribute to your blogs, your slide decks, or whatever it is. So, for instance, when you put all that stuff onto the CEO or the CMO or whatever, you're getting essentially everything through the lens of one person. Instead of allowing everybody in your organization, like just going around and actually interviewing folks, and then taking that back and distilling it down and quoting, you know, the guy who's on the line working on a semiconductor or something like that, who's the engineer who can't articulate things well, but when you start talking to him about something, he can sort of talk through things, and then you can capture that and repurpose it in some, you know, form or fashion. So allowing everybody to have a little bit of a voice and participate means sometimes having one or two people in your organization reaching out and sort of harvesting that voice from them. And then you start to have a multi-dimensional feel to your company, because now the voice is not just the CMO or the CEO, which is where all the, that's where most of the bullshit comes from. But you start to actually get to hear from, you know, folks who are right there on the front line, who's just sort of being very authentic about what's on their mind.
Yeah, and if you're on Twitter right now, tweet to Marcus Nelson. I think it's at Marcus Nelson, because this guy's so interesting to follow. He was the original guy. A little fun fact about Marcus: he was the first guy at Salesforce when they said, "Yeah, we need somebody to run social media." He's like, "What are you talking about?" And so he started social media. He actually invented the command center, I believe, the social media command center. So he was like the first guy to run social at Salesforce, which is tremendous if you look at where obviously they're at now. Yeah.
So we're out of time.
Yeah, no, we have.
Yeah, we have time, okay, right, is there one more?
There was one more question. I actually have a question.
Sure.
There are so many outlets, Google Plus, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, email campaign, blogs, so many SlideShare. So, what are the parameters that one has to use to decide which one is good for me? My customers are business customers and financial services or something, and let's go to LinkedIn or Twitter. Is there like a straightforward formula? Is there a magic portfolio formula, or is it more of a, you know, let's try it out kind of thing? First question. Second question, more importantly, if I'm in a startup, where do I start? I mean, I don't have Twitter followers, I don't have Facebook followers, and I can put a tweet, but nobody's going to be looking at it.
So
where
you
do I
would pay
start?
$100 and buy 1 million followers. No, don't do that.
No, I don't have the money.
That's the takeaway.
I said $100.
That's the takeaway.
Anybody want to jump in?
Go ahead.
So the first question again.
What is the portfolio of, depending
Channels.
upon my customer base or my product?
Who is your customer? That's it. I mean, there's more to it, but if you want the simple sort of, I can walk away and I can act on this. Who is your customer, and where are they actively finding, you know, solutions to the problem or answers to their questions?
So what are some of the best practices, or maybe some examples?
I mean, search, listen, right? So everything has a search on it. You can go and on, you know, LinkedIn, and you can go on Google, and you can, there's a lot of tools, Social Mention, a bunch of these tools that are out there that'll help you search. The Topsy, for instance, is a great place to get to search through Twitter, even though Twitter has search, but Topsy actually searches beyond Twitter as well. But using some of these social search tools that are available for free, Social Mention, Topsy, I know there's a few other ones, but these guys are free and they're pretty good, and they're the ones that are coming to mind right now. But seeing what sort of conversations are happening, talking to existing customers, and even potentially doing a survey of, like, you know, where do you go online? And, you know, where do you find answers when you have questions to, you know, things related to, you know, our company, or not our company, but something within the industry or something. You don't want to, again, be self-serving. You want to understand where do they find the answers, not where do they find a recipe for pot roast or something like that, but where do they find the stuff that's something you would help them solve. And then go and listen and see if indeed there are other people out there like that, and, you know, and participate. There are some channels that it's really obvious that there's likely folks that are out there. Like, again, if you have content and you start churning it out and sharing it from your blog over to, again, I'm saying this again because I really am fond of this and a few other tools, but LinkedIn, you now then you can publish it, and then you can actually spend money, a little bit of money, to amplify it specifically to a target market so nobody's listening. Great, pay a little money to extend the reach of that content to the people who you want to listen until you start to sort of, what I call it, you dig a well in order to get water, right? Like if there's nobody there, you have to dig a well before you want water. You can't just start broadcasting a bunch of stuff into the ether and nobody's there. And so you have to add value through producing great content or engaging with folks or whatever the case may be in order to get a community of folks over time. But initially, listening and searching will help you identify. It's more complicated than that a little bit, but at least starting to do that, will get you on the path.
Just as a very, very broad generalization, which I shouldn't be doing, but I'll do it anyway. If you kind of take it at the B2B versus B2C level, which again is not necessarily a distinction that is true anymore, you could argue that Twitter is something that is pretty much neutral. A lot of people are going to be on Twitter, regardless of whether you're selling soap or you're selling heavy machinery or whatever it is. But if you're looking for more sort of getting the audience engaged and so on and so forth, then you're going to start paying us for advertisements. LinkedIn for the B2B side and Facebook for the B2C side. Right? And again, I'm generalizing, but that's typically sort of what the old sort of wisdom was about where you would first go to start looking for things before you decide on where exactly you want to start engaging.
Give you a real world example, right? When I came over to LinkedIn, the biggest problem was, how do you market on LinkedIn? And nobody knew you could market. So what I did, I wrote this book. It's called, it's basically the all-encompassing guide to marketing. I'm plugging myself here, I'm sorry. But it's basically the all-encompassing guide to marketing on LinkedIn. We had all this content everywhere, right? And I'm getting to a point with this. The idea was to put it all in one place, make it easily accessible, and this is like 53 pages, right? So I was a content marketing role last year. This guy walks up to me and he says, "Hey man, I love your content, but you know what? There's too much value there in one piece." I'm like, "You're out of your mind. What marketer ever downloaded something and said there's too much value here, I'd like to give this back to you?" But he had a short-sighted view. And where I'm going with this is your customers and prospects are in control, right? They're going to consume the content, the channel they want to. So you better have something that covers the entire space, the gamut, or runs the gamut, if you will. So with this thing right here, this is our big rock piece of content. We call it big rock piece of content. It's a big stake in the ground. It's the mothership, if you will. And what we did with this one piece of content to repurpose the hell of this thing, using the turkey analogy. Anybody know the turkey analogy?
Yeah.
I stole this from Rebecca Lee from the Altimeter Group. What do you do at Thanksgiving? You have this enormous turkey, and then you're eating turkey for the next 2 months. Well, this is the turkey. And I repurposed this thing into a podcast, into 2 webinars, into 2 SlideShare decks, into 2 smaller ebooks, into 17 blog posts, 2 videos, 2 cheat sheets, 4 infographics. So now, all those little pieces are all little tentacles out there, and we got this thing, it's all leading back to this, which is what we want them to get to. And it's all out there in every single channel you get, from Twitter to email to even Facebook and to Google+. Everything is repurposed from this to support that, and it's all out there. We will get, if you haven't gotten to this yet, we'll get to you in one or the other. In a good way, we're helping, right? We're helping the marketers. That's the idea. But
You guys did a webinar on it?
we did everything. I mean, anything, like I call it like the Tony Soprano. Like, I'm gonna pull this thing over, I'm gonna strangle on the side of the road. Like, how much value can I get out of it? And then I'm gonna go bury it in the desert when I'm done, and then write something new. That's a horrible analogy. Don't ever use it.
Is that available online?
Yeah. This is available at if you go to the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog, it's on there. So.
Okay. Can you send the link or email? Okay. We'll send the link in an email, put it on our website as well.
So we talk a lot about social media platforms, Facebook, Google, and Google Plus, and all of that, Twitter. How effective is the email marketing campaigns? Small to big, large retailers do a lot of email marketing. How effective have you seen?
I mean, I think, so we're not doing a lot of email marketing with our clients, but in the research that I've done and in the limited work that we've done in email marketing, I mean, email is, so I look at things, I look at it sort of like, I call them like concentric circles of communication. Now, in the past, if you wanted to actually talk to a prospect or whatever, they said, what was the saying? Something like 7 touches equals a sale or something like that, right? And so what were touches before? Like to send something in the mail, to hand something to them, to call them, and that's about it, or something. I think that's pretty much it. Nowadays, we have all these ways of essentially touching people, and some are very personal and up close and strong, and some are very light touches, like, you know, saying hi to somebody or engaging with them on Twitter, as long as you're not sort of just immediately trying to sell them, engaging with them and asking them a question or trying to solve the problem is a little bit of a lighter touch, right? It's a place where they're publicly available, they've given you permission because of the nature of the network to be publicly available and engage with them and so on. Then phone numbers and face-to-face and email are places that are right in the middle of that circle, which are more protected, and once you get access to that sort of thing, you have to tread lightly on how sort of hard you knock on people with that sort of thing. So email is a powerful place because in most cases, you're going to a place that people consider personal, and they go and they're active every single day. There's some weird things happening nowadays because of, for instance, a lot of people using Google, Gmail and Google apps for their email, and Google has sort of screwed around with it with these tabs and all that stuff, which in all honesty is both a curse and a benefit in my mind for myself, but as a marketer trying to send stuff out, sort of affects things a little bit. But sort of to hurry up and to narrow down on your question, email marketing is a very close touch point, and if you add value there and you don't abuse it, it can be extremely successful. We have a client, for instance, that deals with enterprise level content, content strategy, content creation, global readiness, all kinds of stuff related to that for large tech companies out here. And we send out an email every single month, but that email has to have a lot of value in it. So when we have any self-promotional stuff, it has to be overwhelmingly overshadowed by stuff that has value in it, because every single time we send out about 10,000 emails, you know, depending on how self-serving we are with that email, we'll end up getting, you know, 2 or 3% that will basically mark it as spam. And it sucks. It's going to happen. It is going to happen, and potentially they're not the right audience. So we've even sort of had discussions internally that, you know, we have to leverage this email in a form of promotion as well as nurturing. And so if we do drop 2 or 3% of folks because they decide they don't want to, you know, be a part of it, that's perfectly fine. But when that number starts to increase and when people start to get turned off by that, then you lose that opportunity, you know. So I think one of the things that's really important about email marketing is the segmentation. Understanding what message you're getting out to them based on how they basically became a part of your email list. Something that I think was pretty awesome, I don't know if you guys know who Nancy Dworny is and Dworny Design, and if you guys know out in Sunnyvale, these guys are husband and wife who started an agency and do primarily communications and presentations. They were the ones that did the Al Gore Inconvenient Truth big presentation that, you know, the movie and all that sort of thing. And they have a tool, she has books and all this stuff that talk about communication and presentations, and they had this thing called the diagrammer. The diagrammer is essentially this, if you think of stock photography, this is a place where you go and you would download like essentially charts and little tiny, little widgets and things that help you communicate things like the flow of information, the stuff you would almost use for infographics or presentations to show how things were connected in data. They were all little Venn diagrams and all this sort of thing. Previously, they charged for this like you would a stock photography thing. As of lately, they've essentially made it completely free, but when you sign up, they essentially have you fill out a form just like you were going and downloading an ebook from a B2B company or something like that. Why? Because they know that people who use that tool are people that are interested in going to their webinars and their seminars around how to be better communicators. And so they create a list from that, and they likely segment that list out differently than they do anybody else who gets who comes into their list from someplace else. And you think about, well, somebody who comes in from the marketing solutions at LinkedIn is different than somebody who comes in from the like the HR. I want to use LinkedIn for HR and recruiting, right? And so don't mix messages. Keep those messages as relevant as possible. That's a really long answer for all that. Sorry.
Can I just add one little point to that? Based on our experience, email marketing is not going to be anytime soon, right? So it's a critical part of the mix, and we are a startup, we use email marketing a lot, but it's got to be in combination with the other elements like social channels. And one of the things that we do a lot is, to the point that Adam talked about, you typically, if you go about doing things like buying lists or even capturing information from forms on your website, you'll get some information about the leads, about the prospects, but not enough. So what we do is we augment the lead information with information about them from social. Because that way, when you actually do the segmentation and targeting, you are trying to get far more accurate in terms of what kind of content you're throwing out to them. Because the last thing you want to do is to, I have this favorite gripe about my credit card company sending me a flyer or an email every week asking me to become a customer, and I've been their customer for the last 10 years, right? And they should know it by now, right? So the point is you got to get to know them better, but email marketing, especially if you're in a startup, don't ignore it, because you are not, let me say this, I'm in the social lead management space, but it's still early days, you're not going to close a deal on social, right? Unless you're selling something like e-commerce based or consumer based. If you're any way sort of related to B2B or enterprise, you're not going to close the deal completely on social today. So email marketing is an essential part of the mix.
Yeah, and again, out of 12,000 downloads on this in 30 days, right? That's, I mean, again, this is not LinkedIn proper doing this. This is LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. So we did this all on our own, our little marketing hub, marketing solutions. Out of the 12,000 downloads in the first month, over a third of that was email. And it just goes to show that it was InMail across between Eloqua and email, and then our own product InMail, right? But the idea is you need to just have it everywhere. Like you said, email, man, like taking that email personalization and the data from social and making that as relevant as possible. Again, it goes back to more relevant content, not more email blocks, more relevant content in that email, and always helping. But again, it's all part of like everything. You have to do everything. It's all this integrated marketing strategy. This is the year, man. No more social and silo. No more content over there. Like a company like Copyblogger, who I think are the smartest content marketers on the planet. I was talking to Brian Clark at an event last year, and he took their company and he took PR, and they're a small company. He took PR, social, and content and put it all in one team because there's so much overlap, right? So you can't have PR. I mean, who's more important? The New York Times, page 4, or Brian Solis' blog? I'll take Brian Solis' blog over that. But the idea is that they're all overlapping, so you can't have them working in silos. They have to be in the same team. They have to be communicating, and then that all supports your email and your demand gen. It's all this. We're all going to be like a big group hug in the middle of the office one day. So, but that's where we're at, man. And how many companies are there? Not very many. We got a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much. This was really great. I hope you did.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I got 2 books left. If anyone.
I take one here.
I think one.
Yeah. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you so much.
And again, that's available for download. It's a free download. So that was great, man. Thanks for having us. Oh man, so I think